Anthony Evans with a glowing plant in San Francisco, bioengineering plants to emit light. Anthony, you'd never know I lived in that city. Thanks for welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning. Hi.
Yeah. Hi, thank you so much. How on earth did you get on track to start making glowing plants?
So, one of the interesting, exciting things about this project is that, while the rest of the world sort of has not really heard of this idea before, actually glowing plants have been around for a pretty long time within synthetic biology and scientific circles. And one of my co-founders, Omri, he has built a software that lets you create your own genetic design called Genome Compiler. And he was at Google's Solve4X conference last year, and he sort of talked about this project as an example of something that you might one day do with his software. And a lot of people got very excited about it and thought it was a cool idea. So, he sort of decided to let's do it, let's make it happen. And he approached me last August at Singularity University, which is a small sort of entrepreneurship technology sort of institute in Moffett Field in Mountain View. Mm-hmm. And I just fell in love with the idea really, really fast and thought, I've got to help this guy make it happen. And we started going along to the bioluminescent meetup at BioCurious, which is a do-it-yourself biology lab in Sunnyvale. And we went along there, and it turned out that there was this guy named Kyle, and he was already working on it as well. So, we started working together. We joined forces, and this is where we are.
So, at this point in the process, how much light will a plant emit? Like, how bright would it make the environment around it?
Like a nightlight, maybe?
Yeah, maybe like a nightlight. I mean, these first plants are going to be, quite dim. This is the start of a pretty long process. The sort of model that we're looking at for this is something more like glow-in-the-dark paint, or like a firefly. So something that you need to see in a dark room. But one day hopefully we can build on this work and create something that lights up our streets.
Now, this light does exist in nature. You brought up fireflies, and I know there are some other species as well that create their own light.
Like in the ocean, for instance.
Yeah. So is that what you're doing?
Right.
You're taking genes from those plants or animals and then splicing them into the plants?
Yeah, exactly. We're actually taking genes from an organism called Vibrio fischeri, which is a small marine bacteria. And it has all the genes inside it that creates two chemicals. One is called luciferase, which is an enzyme, and then the other is genes that code for a small molecule called luciferin. And when luciferin and luciferase get together with some oxygen, they react to create light. It's called cold light because it's obviously very, very efficient. It doesn't create any heat as a byproduct, so all the energy that you put in comes out as light.
Oh, cold light. Okay, yeah.
Interesting.
That is interesting. And so I would imagine there is some hesitation, especially in the Bay Area and portions of California, when it comes to genetically modified plants. Typically, the kind that we ingest are the ones that raise red flags. Would these plants be able to spread and possibly work their way into the natural vegetation of the area?
These plants are fertile. One of the things that we want to do is, a lot of the criticism of genetically engineered food like this is that, large corporations are attempting to take over and control the food supply, and that people have understandably quite large reservations about this. So one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we're creating this as an open source product. It's on an open source license. And so, anyone else who wants to build on top of this work will be able to do so themselves. If you get the seeds, you'll be able to create offspring of them. But we don't expect them to spread, really far in the environment. The plant that we're using is not native to the area. It won't survive very well in the wild. It's more of a house plant that needs quite a lot of looking after to make sure that you keep it. It doesn't like being in direct sunlight. If it gets more than 25 degrees Celsius, it really struggles. So, it's a pretty safe plant. We think there's a very low risk of it spreading. It doesn't have many similar species, so the risk of cross-pollination of the genes is extremely low. This plant is basically about as safe as you can get with something like this.
Do you think eventually you might use this, what you learn with this sort of hard to care for plant, would you ever apply it in something a little hardier?
Like a tree where you could light streets?
That's the longer term vision. So, we're starting with a small plant. We're using a plant called Arabidopsis, and this, as I mentioned, it's a pretty good plant for one reason, that it's unlikely to sort of get wildly out of hand. But it's also been really well studied by scientists. So this is called a model organism, and because it's got one of the shortest genomes of any plant, and because it's got relatively short life cycle, scientists have been studying this for a really long time.
So you've already
that's one reason why we chose this.
You've already exceeded your. I'm sorry.
but the plan is for the future to really work on the brightness first, and then to go to bigger plants. We've announced a stretch goal that if we can get to 400K in backers, then on Kickstarter. So you can go and look at the project if you type glowing plant into Kickstarter. If we get to 400K, then we will put this into a rose as well, and we will try and make a glowing rose. And so that will be a little bit of a bigger plant. And then over time, we can work on bigger things.
That's exactly what I was going to say, how that you've already exceeded your initial goal on Kickstarter, and now you have a higher goal, and you're well on your way to reaching that, which is the beginning of June. You need to hit that number, right?
Yeah, we have to get there before June 6th.
Before
the
June
way
6th.
Kickstarter works, for people who aren't familiar, is you have a sort of a finite campaign of somewhere between 30 and 60 days, and you try and raise your money in that period, and then you go and work on the products for. In our case, it's going to take about 6 to 12 months to work on this technology and get seeds ready that we send out to people who supported us.
I imagine the natural, well, I guess it wouldn't be natural selection, but the selection process would be very easy, because you just need to turn off the lights and look at all the plants you have, and the brightest ones, you keep those and ditch the others, right?
That's exactly how it works. Yeah, we don't need to introduce any kind of herbicide resistance or any of these other things, because we can use light as a marker.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Well, Anthony Evans with a glowing plant in San Francisco. The Kickstarter campaign, like he said, just search glowing plant and you'll find it right there. Thanks for joining us this morning. Good luck with the campaign and the project.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
All right, stick around.